I'm Brandon. Welcome to my channel, Books in the Shire. Today I am trying a new location. It's not a new location, but I'm standing up for a video and that's really weird for me. You probably don't care, but I'm trying something new and I thought I would share. Don't really like it so far, but we're going to film the video this way anyway. So for this video, I'm going to be talking about all the book series that I am not going to continue with. I've read at least one book in the series and it just was not my thing. I didn't really enjoy it that much, so I'm not going to continue with the series. I want to preface this with saying that if I didn't like one of your favorite books, this does not mean anything. That's just my personal taste. You are obviously allowed to have your personal taste as well, and I'm not trying to say your taste is bad. I'm just saying that these books weren't for me. I didn't enjoy them, and that's perfectly okay. There are 13 series on my list that I'm not going to be continuing with. Like I said, I've read at least one of the books in the series, and I will talk about that with each series. The first book series that I'm not going to continue with is the Sherlock Holmes series by Brittany Cavallaro. This is a Sherlock Holmes retelling. Technically it's not a retelling, it follows the descendants of Sherlock Holmes and John Watson. So technically not a retelling, but kind of similar to a retelling. I've read the first two books in this quartet, and I really enjoyed the first one. I think I gave it 3 or 4 star. The characters weren't my favorite. I think they were trying a bit too hard to be unique, I guess you could say, but they weren't my favorite, but I did really enjoy the mystery element of it. And so I bought the entire series being like, I'm gonna read it, and here it is on this list. But I read the second book and I thought it was okay. Honestly, I was so unengaged. I listened to it audibly and couldn't tell you what happened in that book. The plot wasn't holding my attention enough. I feel like there's trying too many. I feel like there were too many plot twists. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah. And so it's not like it was a bad book or anything. It just definitely wasn't for me. So after reading the second book, I was like, I'm just not going to continue with the series. So I just unhauled them. The next series that I won't be continuing with is the Black Hollow Lane series by Julia Noble. This is a middle grade fantasy series. And I enjoyed the first book. I've only read the first book, but I enjoyed it, but it didn't really stand out to me. It basically follows these kids who go to a boarding school in Scotland, and I think there's magic or something. Sounds similar to another series, and it kind of was, but I don't want to say it. Yeah, it just didn't stand out to me, and I'm not saying it's a bad series. I would totally recommend it if you like middle grade and if you like fantasy. I would totally recommend it. It just was not for me. The characters didn't hold my attention, neither did the plot, so that's why it's on this list. The next series is the Princess Diaries series by Meg Cabot. 2 or so years ago, I was like, I'm gonna read this entire series. Never read it, but absolutely love those movies. Anne Hathaway, I love her, a queen. And Julie Andrews, what am I thinking? Julie Andrews was right there. I really enjoyed the first book. I thought it was super fun, and obviously it's really similar to the first Princess Diaries movie, because that's what it's based off of. And I really enjoyed it, but Lily, I mean, she wasn't great in the first Princess Diaries movie either, but holy shit, she was annoying in the book. She, honestly, who would be friends with her? She was so mean, and Mia couldn't like anything without her friend being like, well, you know, because according to the encyclopedia, girly, it's not that serious. Let Mia like what she wants to like, unless it's problematic, but half the time it wasn't problematic. She was just making it problematic. I enjoyed the first book, but then every other book after that, I just honestly could not care. I think the books are categorized as young adult, but I would definitely categorize them as middle grade because it just feels a little more childish to me, and I don't mean that in an offensive way. It just reads younger to me. I can totally see younger kids really enjoying these books, but it just, as an adult, it doesn't read as well. But definitely would recommend them to fans of middle grade or younger YA and to kids. The next series on this list is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. I saw the movie before I even read the book, and I really enjoyed the movie. That was the whole reason I wanted to read the books, but they are really different, and I wasn't expecting them to be quite as different as they were. In the books, the characters weren't really as engaging to me. I really didn't care enough about them to keep going with the series, and the plots were just a little childish at points to me, and I mean they're kind of childish in the movie too, but I think I engaged better with the story as a film than as a book, so that's just why I decided not to keep going with the series. The next series is Miss Peregrine's School for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. I read the first book in high school, and honestly I don't remember too much about the book. I just remember disliking the spooky images in it. It just was unsettling, and I know that was the point, but it was too unsettling for me. And also I just remember not really being engaged with the plot line. So I just didn't really enjoy it that much. So that's why it's on this list. I really don't have much to say about it because I honestly don't remember much about the series. The next series, I think a lot of people really, I don't think I know, a lot of people really enjoy this series, but I did not enjoy it, and that is the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black. It was just like, I read it because of the hype and I was really intrigued, I was really excited, and I was annoyed. Like, I don't think any of the characters were interesting. I don't think the storyline was interesting. I do appreciate the whole twist on the title. I don't want to give anything away, but I think a lot of people have read it. If you haven't read it and you want to read it, skip this part. But basically the book is titled The Cruel Prince, and you think that Cardan, the main prince character, is the cruel prince. It's not. Psych, it's his brother. I did like that element, but I feel like there was too much like, oh, feel bad for Cardan, he's had a hard life, and I'm like, bitch, haven't we all? Like, I don't know, I didn't care. And Jude was so annoying. Oh my god, so annoying. It was a miss for me, and I'm sorry if you love that series, but I didn't enjoy it. I'm sorry. The next series that I won't be continuing with is The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. This is a YA fantasy series. I really enjoyed the premise of this book, but I think for execution, it wasn't my style. I think it was really sold on, you know, fantasy elements. It was fantasy, but it was set in like modern time and everything in modern day. And so I wasn't really expecting that, nor was I expecting kind of this wild goose chase to occur in the book. So that was, it wasn't really my thing. And I really enjoyed the fairy tale elements of this book, but that wasn't enough to really hold my attention for it. It's not a bad book by any means. I would totally recommend it, but it just wasn't for me. The next series is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I DNF'd Caraval. I just really did not enjoy it. I thought the characters were annoying, and I really thought the premise of the book was actually really interesting. I loved that concept, and I wish that it had been executed a bit differently, because I think I would have loved the book otherwise. Like I said, the characters were annoying. They just didn't do anything for me. It was just a lot of woe me and not doing anything, just being upset about herself. I felt like too, some of the plot lines in it were a little too, I guess, tropey for me, or YA tropey for me. I feel like it was a little convenient for like some of the characters to be meeting and to be kind of building certain relationships. It just never felt real to me, I guess. And it's like, I know it's a fantasy, it's not technically real, but it should feel real, shouldn't it? It should feel like you could see this happening, you want to be there. And for me, it was never like that. It was just like, damn, that really sucks. I was so uninvested, and I think if the characters were written a bit differently, I might have finished that book and might have really enjoyed it, but the characters really brought it down for me, and that's just why I'm not going to be continuing. The next series I have is Three Dark Crowns by Kendara Blake. The premise for this book sounded so interesting, and I think the book itself was actually pretty interesting, but I think it was a little too slow at points, and it felt like nothing was happening in the story. It was very character driven, and I've spoken before how I'm more of a plot reader and not a character reader, so that was hard for me to stay engaged and invested, was because it really just focused on the characters and what they were doing and basically their day-to-day life. I think there was so much potential in it, and I'm sure the series went and got better. I don't know, I only read the first book. It wasn't engaging enough because the plot wasn't there. There wasn't much plot, and when there was plot, it was interesting, but it was so rare that I wasn't attentive to it. Next I have Monsters of Verity by V.E. Schwab. This is a young adult sci-fi series. I don't know if you would classify it as sci-fi, dystopian, or fantasy, but it kind of encompasses all three. And I just didn't really like this book. The characters were bland to me. The premise was, the premise was interesting, but the execution was bland. It felt too convenient at points, and it felt too unoriginal, I guess. And I don't want to, because obviously books aren't totally original, but there's a way I feel like to execute certain plots with originality that I think was lacking within this book. You know how you can kind of predict things and not necessarily in a good way? That's how this book felt to me. I felt like I was predicting what was going to happen next because it was the obvious route to go, and it just kept being obvious to me. Definitely still a good book. I would recommend it to people who, one, like V.E. Schwab, but two, like, you know, a sci-fi fantasy dystopian, however you would classify it. I would definitely recommend it because I think it had some original elements. Just as a whole, for me, it didn't totally stand out as original. Not saying she was copying anyone, it just didn't stand out to me. Next, I have The Bone Witch by Rin Chapeko. I have tried reading this book several times. I've DNF'd it, I think, twice. The first time I read it, I think I got 50 or 60% through. I was really interested, but it took a different turn than I was expecting. I didn't realize that you follow I think the main character's name is Tia. I didn't realize that you follow her story from such a young age. I think she's like 11, and for the amount of the book that I read, which I said was like 50 or 60%, she's basically 11. To me, the world didn't really stand out as totally unique or original. It just felt like a generic fantasy world with nothing special to it. And so that kind of like made me less engaged. And like I said, the main character being so young really wasn't something I was interested in, nor was I expecting. And so when I was trying to read it the second time, obviously I knew the character was young. I knew she would be young because I wanted to give it a second chance because I thought it was something I would really enjoy. Reading it the second time, I probably got 20% of the way through. And again, it just had the same issues where I wasn't engaged. It didn't feel super unique or original, and so I just said, I'm just gonna give up. If I don't like it, that's totally fine. But I would recommend it to people who are interested in it. I just think I would preface with, the character is young for a lot of the first book, from what I know of. So just be prepared for that. Next, I have Shatter Me by Tahara Mafi. I literally just finished this book. This was my first read of 2022, and it was a book. This is written in first person. I hated all of her inner monologue. It was so much. It was so annoying. Like, I felt like none of the characters were ever talking to each other. It was all just Juliet's inner monologue, and that just was not interesting to me. I also felt like the plot was a little unclear. You kind of know what's going on, but I was always like, hey, where is this leading to? But it never felt like it had a clear way it was going. So I was a little lost at points, and I was definitely unengaged. The inner monologue really threw me off. I didn't care what she had to say because she didn't have anything fresh or interesting to say. The last series I have to talk about is the Nancy Drew series by Caroline Keene. I loved this series as a kid, so that's kind of why I wanted to reread it as an adult. So I read the first book, The Secret of the Old Clock, and it just was a miss for me. I definitely think it's a series that is truly meant for kids. You know, it was really engaging for a kid. The mystery is fun. And I'm not saying the mystery wasn't fun as an adult. It was fun because I obviously didn't know what was happening because I don't remember the series. But it wasn't like anything special to me. I think it's definitely a product of its time. You know, the whole mystery is about this rich family this rich man, his inheritance isn't going to the correct people. So all these people obviously are upset that they're not getting the inheritance that they thought they were get, or like the stuff from the will that they thought they were gonna get. But it was just white people complaining, and I was like, I don't care. I don't know. It was just really boring. Nancy was so annoying. Like, nothing redeemable about her character. She was just like, I can do whatever I want. I'm a strong, independent girl boss. Like, girlie, no you ain't. You rely on your daddy, who was an accomplished lawyer in this town, to be able to run around and do whatever the hell you want, because a normal teenager would not be able to do that. Those are the 13 book series that I'm not going to be finishing. Sorry if my explanations were redundant, but I mean, I know what I like, and the books didn't deliver on what I wanted, so that's why I didn't like them, and that's totally okay. If these were some of your favorite books, I don't mean any harm. These just weren't vibing with me, and that's totally okay. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.